Okay, I think we'll start. We're still very early by Greek time, but by French time, we're probably pretty punctual. Welcome, everybody. I'm Mark Mazower. I'm the director of the Institute, and it's a huge pleasure to welcome the very distinguished Greek film director, Costas Ferris, who's come to join us. Thank you very much, Mr. Ferris, who will be in conversation with our own Ersi Sotiropoulos, and the subject of the conversation will be exile in the Junta years in Paris, a period when Mr. Ferris was here, fleeing the dictatorship. And we've been talking a lot about at the Institute about Paris as a center of exiles of different nationalities and different periods in the 19th and 20th centuries. It's a theme that I think many of us are curious to pursue, and we thought this was a wonderful way to start. We're going to start off the conversation in English. I have no idea where it's going to end up, but it doesn't really matter because there are numerous translators. I should add that Mr. Ferris was born in Cairo in 1935 into the Greek community in Egypt, moved to Greece, and then came to Paris, as you will, I think, hear, in '67, and moved back to Greece, where he had a very distinguished career as a film director and a writer and journalist, was one of the key figures in the so-called New Greek cinema of the 1960s. We might hear about that and its relationship to French cinema. Is perhaps best known for his 1983 film Rembetiko, which was a film about a kind of music that the refugees had brought with them from Smyrna in the coast of Asia Minor after 22, that had been banned and regarded as scandalous by many generations of conservative Greek governments. So it was part of the kind of breaking open of taboos in Greece in the 1980s. It won the Silver Bear, I believe, at the Berlin International Film Festival when it was shown, and he is a very prominent member of that generation of Greek filmmakers. So we're very, very lucky to have him here. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you. Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. And I will hand over to Ersi to start the conversation. Thank you, Ersi.
From where to start?
Ersi, you put the microphone.
But I have this one.
You have that one. Okay, fine.
I don't know where to start from. How did you end it up in France? Was that a choice? You came here, if I remember well, that was 5 months after the junta was imposed. So how?
Yes. Okay. So 50 years after I left Paris. 54 years after May '68, 53 years after the birth of my daughter in Paris also, and I'm here again. I find that it's changed a lot, but also there are a lot of things that remained the same. Anyway, Paris for the Greeks, I start from something that has been told by a friend of mine, Costas Stavros, yesterday. I told him, next time we go together to Paris. He said, no, I don't go anymore to Paris. I said, why? He said, because we had the chance to live the happiest era of Paris. All the end of the 60s and the May '68, etc. I don't want to lose the feeling that I have for Paris, so I prefer not to go again. At the same time, I met one other friend today that is living in Paris, Dimitris Saris, and he was crying because he remembered everything we lived in Paris that was really in a period where in Greece there was sadness because we had a dictatorship, a harsh dictatorship. The Greeks that came to Paris had the chance to live the big happiness of living a real utopia, a real new society without the hope of creating this society, but living it as an example for an ideal society to come, even if it will never comes. It's strange that what I am saying, because I say always that May 68 has been the only one successful revolution in history, the only one, not the best, because it never sought the power. We never wanted to gain the power, but we lived as an example. In French, we say it action exemplaire, exemplary action. The society we dream to live, where everybody loves everybody, everybody lives with no money. It's impossible, but we did it for 2 months. Yes, we did it. Everybody has a home, everybody has food to eat, and everybody is happy to create, because during May 68, we created many things, create poetry, music, cinema, and a lot of things. Even there was a family that created technical new instruments, music instruments, during the May 68. I think you...
No, it's a cigarette.
Huh?
It's a cigarette. I just need to smoke.
So the French were saying, that May 68 was created by the Greeks and the cinematographers, the people of the cinema. We were saying, but the Greeks, half of the Greeks were people of cinema, were mostly directors, assistant directors, cinematographers, actors, and people of the Greek cinema. And that was a fantastic solution, because we had connection with the people of the French cinema. Personally, I was a friend since 1962 with one of the two experimental directors in France. The other is Jean-Luc Godard. My friend was Jean-Daniel Paulet. They are the most avant-garde directors that existed in the Nouvelle Vague. We were friends since 1962 to the end of his life. We worked together, we were collaborators and friends, most of it. So Jean-Daniel made the contact of me with the French Nouvelle Vague. So, grâce à lui, I met Jean-Luc Godard, I met Truffaut, Louis Malle, Pierre Cast, Jacques Doniol-Valcroze, Barbet Schroeder. He made more. He was the producer of a film where I was assistant director. And that made us living easy the first period.
So how did you survive here? First of all, you came thanks to Jean-Daniel Paulet, you arrived here.
Yes.
He helped you to escape Greece.
Jean-Daniel Paulet, Barbet Schroeder, and Anatole Daumont, a producer of Argos film, they made everything to help me escape from Greece. And they succeeded. I was received in the house of Jenny Paulet, a fantastic home at Neuilly, bourgeois. And then Rue du Bac in the Quartier. And from the beginning, they started to make parties with people of cinema to find for us a job, something.
So that was the real utopia. What you
The
were-
real utopia. But there was something else. Many of us were assistant directors and had worked in French films. So we became friends with the French assistant directors. For example, Stavros Kostadourakos was friend with Claude Miller. Claude Miller, later director, he was assistant of Philippe Fourastier. Philippe Fourastier was shooting a film called La Bande à Bono, the story of the band of Bono, the anarchist. So, Claude Miller called 100, maybe more, maybe 120 Greeks as extras. We had 150 francs per day. With 150 francs, you could live for 1 week easily. And we were working every day, and there happened some strange things. We were dressed as Zouave. Zouave was the ex-gendarme of France, trying to find Bono. And among them, there were Nikos Koundaros, the greatest director. I was his assistant. Yorgos Koundaros, his friend, his brother. Nikos Papatakis, Nikos Panagiotopoulos, Dimitris Stavrakas, Stavros Kostadourakos, all the Greek later directors, and some of them, they already were directors. We are extras in the film La Bande à Bono, dressed as Zouave and trying to find the Bande à Bono. It was a fantastic period because we found a restaurant in the banks of Le Marne, outside of Paris, where they had some small fishes, just like the Greek...
Gavros. Like Gavros.
Like
Marida.
Marida. Like Marida. And we were saying at noon, let's go for Marida. to remember Greece. Another thing was very strange. The mass work, we worked more than 20 days. Every day is 150 francs. At the end, the director, I'll tell a joke that happened. The director, Philippe Fourastier, was explaining to his assistant, Claude Miller, I want some extras coming from there, two of them from the other part, 3 coming there and moving this way, etc. Before finishing his phrase, we were translating to the others, and we were taking the places. Suddenly, Philippe was discovering that his extras had already take the place he was saying to his assistant. He said, "What happened? How do they understand?" Claude Miller said to him, "You don't know that you have 120 directors as extras in your film." So he was very happy also. So one day happened something very strange. At the period I was an anarchist, and I had in my house the gravure of the end of Bono. He was there were 4 or 5 policemen killing Bono, a famous gravure that was in many houses. And so one day, Philippe Fourastier called me and 4 or 5 Greek friends, three of whom were directors, to play the part of the policeman that kills Bono. I had to kill Bono in the same way I had the gravure in my house and I adored. But he said, please, he said to Claude, please tell him to cut a little his hair, because at the period we can't have policemen with long hair. I was furious for that, but I needed the 150 francs. So my wife, the mother of Danai, was cutting my hair and looking at television. And suddenly I saw the Grappin, I think Grappin was his name, the doyen of the University of Nanterre, announcing, it was the 2 of May, announcing that from now on the Nanterre is closed because we can't tolerate anymore the youth doing all that fuss for liberties, freedom, sexual freedom, etc., etc. And I was furious. I insulted him in front of the television, and I said, well done, Monsieur Grappin. Demain, la révolution. Tomorrow, the revolution.
We have to talk about that revolution demain.
Then I went to the café of the Greeks.
Emigrec, you have to tell.
Emigrec. There's a book of Vasilis Vasilikos by this title called Café Emigrec. C'est le Café Saint-Claude, en face of l'Apollinaire and the Église of Saint-Germain.
À côté
The
de
Greeks-
l'hôtel Madison now.
Yes, exactly. All the Greeks were there playing flipper, discussing, crying for the dictatorship, etc. I went enthusiast. I said, people, did you understand? Tomorrow, the revolution. They said, oh no, Costas, what are you saying? I said, tomorrow, the revolution. And somebody, Stavrakas, Dimitris, director also, he said, who will make the revolution? The students? I said, yes, why not the students? But he said, the only thing they want to do is make love. And then Stelios Ramphos, another philosopher of today, said, do you think it's a little thing for making a revolution? It's that's how we have the revolution. So next day I went to show the shooting, I killed Bono, and I ran to see what happened. And I arrived in front of the Saint-Claude where happened the biggest crash between the students and the police. In front of the Café Saint-Claude, and the Greeks were behind the glass, looking with big surprise. What happened? Costas said it yesterday. How he didn't know? In front of this Saint-Claude, this scene is shot in a film by Nikos Panagiotopulos called La Limousine. La Limousine is the people in the Saint-Claude looking to the revolution. And then started every day. The biggest day was the 10th, the Friday of 10th of May. I'm stuck a little in May 68. I hope you don't bother.
We're fine there for now.
Yes. So the Friday scent, we call it the Friday scent. We made a big parade all around Paris, and outside of the prison of La Santé, Santé, where there were some students imprisoned. And we ended in front of La Sorbonne, that was closed with the CRS in front, keeping distance. We stayed there and we said, let's occupy le pavé. Let's occupy the pavé. There were around 100,000 people. We sitting in the middle of the day. We said, we don't move from here unless you open the universities. That went on and on and on and on. We had a discussion through Radio Luxembourg. Everybody had a transistor. We were hearing the discussion of Daniel Cohn-Bendit, Sauvageot, and the Minister of Interior, saying, but you can't change the law at this moment. We don't move from here unless you free our friends. And in the morning, we started building barricades. In one night, we built circa 580 barricades from La Place Edmond-Rostand to Contrescarpe, to Saint-Michel, to Saint-Germain-des-Prés, to Rue d'Assas, Jardin du Luxembourg. 580 barricades. And in the morning, at 2 or 3 o'clock after midnight, the big crash. So next day, it was a landscape of disaster. And then de Gaulle decided to open the universities. And Sunday, we occupied all the universities and then the Odeon, the factories, etc., etc., etc. Sunday was really extraordinary because it was like a feast, like a πανηγύρι, πώς θα το λέγαμε, πανηγύρι στα γαλλικά. A feast with people with the orgue de barbarie playing music, people with a guitar singing, people
was also kissing and hugging and
yes, everybody. In front of La Sorbonne were sit Daniel Cohn-Bendit, Sauvageot, Gesmar, etc., and together with the professors, the Nobel Prize professor Jacob, Monod, and many, many big names discussing about society and how people can be happy. Because the big aim of society is to be happy. Before to have lunch or to have any other, how to be happy. And at the same time, there were some interpreters, students with the badge of the interpreter, because many people came from outside Paris, from the villages, to see what happened all around the disaster, except the light, red, green, yellow, red, green, yellow. It never stopped. The only thing that was living. And explaining to the people, the tourists of the day, here is the barricade that was built by the anarchists. He did it alone, and at the end, he took his friend, his girlfriend, and he made a photograph in his own barricade. Here is the barricade that is a real piece of art. Because when the people that made this barricade saw it, they said it was not so nice So they found somewhere a machine à coudre, a machine, a sewing machine. He made it, he put it there, and it became a piece of art, a modern piece of art. Surrealist maybe, but also a piece of art. Then started the occupation of the theater of Odeon was fantastic, because everybody could take the power, the microphone, and talk. Everybody could feel that he's capable of talking to many people. So everybody had a talent. Everybody was useful for this society. That was very, very important. And of course, one night, we made a meeting, the Greeks, at the Sorbonne, searching for a way to make our own occupation. We discussed a lot. There were people that were afraid, other people that were enthusiasts. At one moment, the Papatakis, the director, said, let's occupy the church of San Stephanos. We said, we are not in the period of the anti-clerical movement of the surrealists. What can we do with the church? Then somebody, a musician, Christodoulos Halaris, he was living in the Cité Universitaire, in the pavilion, Greek pavilion of the Cité Universitaire. He came, he said, there is a way you can make the occupation of the Greek pavilion of the Cité Universitaire as an act against the Junta, the dictatorship. I said, okay. I said, I have made a proposition. Let's occupy the Cité Universitaire. But why, etc., etc. I took a friend of mine, Georges Katakouzinos, another director. We went to my friends, the Salle des Anarchistes. We found the Spanish anarchists. We said, venez, venez, il faut enthousiasmer les Grecs pour faire l'occupation du pavillon hellénique. Came somebody called Carlos. I don't know if it's the same Carlos. My friend Carlos. I don't know what happened to him. He came inside, he said, camarade, l'Italie, le pavillon italien est occupé. Le pavillon espagnol est occupé. Le pavillon sud-africain est occupé. Qu'est-ce que vous faites? Vous avez la dictature en Grèce. Faites aussi une occupation. I'll then change the thing. We closed the doors. We said, from now on, nobody leaves. Not have somebody talk to the police or somebody. And we call people, and in the morning, we move. No, before the morning, we move to the Spanish pavilion. We prepare ourselves, and in the morning, in the sunrise, we make the occupation. So we passed the rest of the night in the Spanish pavilion. Somebody said, we don't have a red flag. The Spanish said, we have, take this red flag. I said, what about the black flag? He said, oh, yes, we have also the black flag. So we went 158 people in a line like this, moving all together. I was in front with the black flag, Kountouros, the director, with the red flag. Some people that were looking it as a war, they ran first to cut the telephone lines and to open the door. They opened the door, then we arrived, we went inside, and we proclaimed a free Greek territory.
But how long did you stay?
2 months. It was the longest occupation of May 68. And there was a stable conference, no?
No, it's not.
Assembly.
Open,
24 hours per day assembly, popular assembly. Everybody could talk. I made a discourse about the Rembetiko music that was not yet known, with records to hear the songs. Somebody else made a discussion about the history of Greek revolution. My old friends, in the house of Jean-Daniel Paulet, where I was living before, I left and went to the Greek pavilion. So in the house, Rue du Bac, we went today, gathered the État Généraux du Cinéma, the same house I was living in. This house had a number, telephone number, that was the Hellenistic Babylon. Babylon, I think, 85, 83. That some years later, when Alfred Hitchcock came to make his last film, I think it's a family plot, he asked to find a telephone number, so the sister of Jean-Daniel sold to Hitchcock this number. So if you see this film today, you hear the spy's number is Babylon 83, 85. It's the same number of my house and the same number of the État Généraux du Cinéma. That made all those things made the situation be really a situation of happiness and feast, a big feast. Then I had the chance of working in France. I first worked with the so-called Zanzibar films. Zanzibar films was a group of people financed by rich heirs of the family of the Boissonnas family, Sylvina Boissonnas, Schlumberger family, very rich. She was paying to make films of avant-garde. So we had Philippe Garel, Serge Bar, Philippe Leroy, Sylvina, etc., 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 and I was working as assistant. That's how I became friend with Caroline de Bendern. She was to come today, but finally we left it for the next time. Caroline de Bendern is Marianne de Mai 68, the girl with the flag. I think you all know.
Everybody knows.
Caroline de Bendern. Barney Willen, the saxophonist of the film of Ascenseur à l'échafaud of Louis Malle, je crois. Olivier Mousset, a painter, he lives now in the United States. And the jazz people of period, Didier Léon, etc. That was a special group. Then I wrote a script for this group that was never shot. The title was Out of Order. Symbolically, it was a symbolic story about May 68. And Jean-Daniel read this book and he said, "You have to write for me a script for my next film." So I wrote in collaboration with Serge Waknin, a friend of mine. We wrote a script called Aquarius. The film was shot by Jean Daniel, but he refused to make a narrative film we tried. It was a fantastic idea. And he made a film called Le Sang, that is too violent and non-narrative. There was no narration in it. Then Jean Daniel wanted Vangelis Papathanasiou to write his music for the film. I presented him to Vangelis. He was in Paris with the Aphrodite Child. They had already a success, Rain and Tears, etc. Vangelis heard the story, he liked it, but he didn't trust the French directors. He said, well, I won't make this film, but Costas, you come tomorrow, I have to ask you something. I went next day, he told me, you have to find for me we at the period we were calling it Kikli Τραγουδιών, a circle of songs. Song circle. There was not yet the term of concept album. We were calling it song circle. I want a song circle, you write the lyrics, you write the story, and we made a show of it. Find me an idea. Went next day, I gave him 2 ideas, he chose the one. The one is the Apocalypse of St. John. With a view of the 60s. Just as like the apocalypse is going to come those days. The record was done by the Aphrodite Child, Demis Roussos, Lukas Itheras, Argyris Koulouris. Vangelis was the composer, I was the lyric writer and the book writer. Irene Papas participated. The title is 666, this red record with black number 666. And he had a tremendous success till now. I think he sold some millions of copies around the world. I earned nothing. That's my thought, that's my chance. Okay.
It would be nice, I think, to give the audience a chance to ask you questions. Is that maybe ask the audience if they have questions for you?
Oh yes.
Because,
yes.
but yes, of course, Ersi.
Yes.
I mean, you left, but it seems you have been living here the real utopia. It is not something that I'm sure can be repeated.
Will you allow me to give you that?
Can be repeated. But you left Paris with the first occasion you left Paris, and I can't understand that because you are not like the hardcore native Greek. You are a child of the diaspora. Was that saudade, nostalgia?
Nostalgia.
Even for a place where you were not born.
No. I'm born in Egypt. I lived 22 years in Egypt, and I was a stranger also in Greece. But there is this feeling, the feeling that made me leave Egypt to go to Greece. Why? I was very well established in Egypt, very friendly with the Egyptian people, and I wrote a book now. It's called Kubri Lemon, the Bridge of Lemon Bridge. It's going to be published on February in Greek and Arabic at the same time. But the same reason was that I wanted to go back to Greece.
You went from Egypt to Greece when you were 22. You have been going to Greece often, traveling to Greece?
No.
You have never been?
Never.
What, nostalgia for something?
For I think that the most important thing is to hear the Greek language all around you
So
in
you
the
go
street.
there, it's like a waffle. He went very old to Greece for that. So
I-
you went first time to Greece when you were 20.
Yes. I asked many friends from Egypt. They all agree that the most important κίνητρο, was to hear the Greek language all around us in our life, in the street, to hear the Greek language. That was the reason that made us also, when we learned that in Greece the Junta gave an amnesty to our generation, we all returned.
You returned. So that means that you felt in a sort of malgré tout ça, besides that was a lot, it was interesting. You had job, you had friends here.
Yes.
It was a life, a rich life, interesting, creative life you had here. It was not, because I have lived the last year of dictatorship in Italy. It was not at all like that.
No.
It was not accepting the society, was not receiving. The student movement was very much infiltrated by Junta's informate. So you felt somehow in exile, even besides living a rich and creative life. Ressentis que tu étais un exilé ici.
I wanted to make Greek films.
Very stubborn guy.
Because here I had the chance, after the script of Jean-Pierre Paulet, Antoine Duhamel asked me to write an opera. And I wrote an opera, L'Opéra des Oiseaux. We gave it in Opéra de Lyon. It was a fantastic success. Jacques Longchamp wrote in Le Monde, La maçonnerie du mois de mai a déjà eu sa flûte enchantée. Wow! About us. And then also meeting the Zanzibar films in a shooting, in an expo of the works of Olivier Mosset, came the great Salvatore Dali. I took the courage to ask him to invite him in a premiere of 666. He came. He was enthusiastic, and he started working with me. What a chance. For 2 months, with 3 or 4 meetings per week in Georges V, for doing a fantastic happening for 666 in Barcelona, above the Sagrada Familia of Gaudi. We worked together. I was working, and I didn't realize what a big chance was that, to sit in front of Salvatore Dali and giving ideas for a big happening with big planes that were bombarding the Sagrada Familia, with whales, with elephants, with rhinoceros, and with archbishops with parapluie. And I asked me naively, you mean dolls of archbishops? He said, no, my friend, non jeune homme, des vrais archevêques, real archbishops, pour en finir une fois pour toutes avec l'Église. So I realized that the idea was to create an imaginary happening, but never to do it for real. But I was there, working with Salvatore Dali. When I realized later, I went crazy. I said, is it true? Did it happen? So in France, after the success of 666, I had many propositions of writing lyrics. I wrote some French songs, but when we had...
to go back to Greece, that what I remember was awful at the time.
Yes.
Miserable. It was very...
It was.
And especially then after the Ioannidis year, the end of the dictatorship was really...
Terrible.
It was terrible.
At the same time, I worked in astrology. I learned in astrology.
Really?
Yes.
Can you read my hand?
I was no. I am also the inventor of a special.
You are the...
Yes, I'm the inventor of a special way of doing the astrology, studying the astrology, that are called mythological astrology. The astrology based on the 12 gods of the Greek mythology, and the mythology finding exactly the real thing. I was happy to prophesize 3 major events.
Tell us, please tell us.
The one was, they told me when de Gaulle dismissed, he said, my friends, they said, I don't think he'll live a lot after that. I saw his chart, and I said, well, on November, I don't remember which year he died, after the 1st of November, and before his birthday, in the middle, he will die. So came the middle of November, the middle between the 1st and my friends started calling, you failed, he didn't die. At the same time, we heard at the radio classical music. Oh mon Dieu, il est mort. It was successful.
Go on, and then we are not going to let you go from Paris.
The third one was the end of the dictatorship. We knew that something is happening. So I made the chart. I found the date, the exact date of the end of the kingdom, of the of Constantine. I said 1st of June, his birthday of Constantine of 1973. Midday, not the morning, not the evening, not all the day, midday. At 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, they called me, they said, it's midday. I said, wait a minute. And we heard in the radio the dictator, Papadopoulos, saying, the kingdom is over. Then came the period of after the Polytechnical. We knew that something is happening, and I said, let's see. Yes, let's see.
You were using your chart?
Yes.
Yes.
With a chart.
Yes.
I found the date of 24th of July, that Neptune is very strong, and I knew from a French astrologer that Neptune is a symbol of mass movement in the streets. When you have a big mass movement in the street, it's the influence of Neptune. Then I remembered that she told me that Caramanlis is a fish.
I was in Paris, Caramanlis.
Yes. And I asked her, because Caramanlis said, what Junta? I take the plane, I go to Greece, the Junta will fall. She said, no, Caramanlis will never take the risk. Karamanlis is waiting for a mass movement of reception, then he'll decide to come to Greece. So I said, okay, 24th of July, Karamanlis will come to Greece. And it came, with mass people. But the biggest prediction I made, since...
Do you think that we are going to go back to Greece, we are going to keep you here? We should start a business together. I don't let you go.
I don't work anymore. I was scared. I was scared.
So
Because I made the biggest prediction in the very early day. After May 68, I went to the end of the century. And I discovered that in the end of 1989 and the beginning of 1990, Christmas and Christmas Eve and the first of the year, the sign was making just like a sword killing Jupiter through Saturn and Poseidon, etc. I said, that is the end of one of the two biggest powers in the world. And during Christmas, I was in London, and I saw on television, I heard about the fall of the wall of Berlin, and I saw on television the killing of Ceausescu. I remembered the prediction, and I started crying. And then I said, no more.
I heard about like what you said about May 68 and the students trying to do whatever they wanted to do and these things. What would be your conseil? How would you say conseil?
Your advice.
Your advice to a young cinematographer or someone that wants to work as an assistant director, but she despises the humans in this industry?
The first thing is how to be inspired for living in a better world. That moves you to utopia. But the other thing is how to learn the language of the film to make it possible in a film, in directing, for instance. Because at our time, we have the digital technology that is a mystery. You work in front of a dark box, something strange happens, you don't know what, and you think that you can be a director just by pushing the buttons. I made a book, The General Theory of Cinema, 520 pages. It's the first general theory in the world. Until now, there were a lot of special theories, not general. This one makes all the theories compatible. And then I explained that to understand what's happening inside the dark box is very important, because that's how you understand how come the language of the cinema. So we are very lucky because we started working with the film, looking the picture with the perforations. We knew about the Malta cross, the glyph. We knew how to cut a shot and to link it with another shot, because there is a technique. The language comes from the technology. The script comes from the language. The direction comes from the script. The editing comes from the direction. So everything is linked. So we have to start learning and teaching to the young generations the first initial technique where all happened. We have to start from the Lumiere brothers, even the prehistory, how the inventors of the photography started working, how Kircher invented the magic magic, yes, lamp, how Athanasius Kircher, and then we had the inventor Muybridge invented the successive pictures because the mayor of an American town had made a stihima. Yes, that when a horse is riding, there is one moment where he has the 4 legs in the air. The others, no, never. He has, or unless. So he ordered to Muybridge, yes. He ordered to Muybridge, he was a photographer, to prove that the horse, at one time, he's on there with the 4 legs on the air. So Muybridge put 16 cameras, one after the other, with a fill, cord on the. He put the horse to ride. Every time it broke the fill, there was a photograph. You maybe saw those photographs of Muybridge. And then he discovered that many pictures, one after the other, can create the movement. The idea of movement, the imaginary movement, because there's no real movement. They are static pictures that create the idea of movement by the after image, the effect of the after image. That's very important because the principle of having a static picture and a non-static after image is the essence of all cinema, because cinema can create reality and imagination and link the reality with the imagination and bring to the utopia. Because the cinema is a cinema bears the utopia. I don't know if I answered.
Yeah, I understood. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If I'm not mistaken, when you went back to Greece after '74, the first movie that you made was Exoristos της Λεωφόρου, the exiled in the what was it, in the avenue, right? And I was this is pretty much a movie about youth, disillusioned youth, a little bit lost on drugs. And I was wondering how and why, after all this incredible experience that you have with May '68, and later on in Greece, of course, there was the Polytechnio, as Ersi said. Why did you choose, instead of depicting the utopia, as you said, in the student movements of the time, to look at the more kind of dystopian, disillusioned youth? Thank you.
I have to go back. When I arrived in Greece in 1957, I met some nice people that were studying cinema in a film school. And we became friends. 3 of us, and later 2 more, became collaborators. The one was the son of the poet Nikiforos Vertakos, Costas Vertakos. The other was Iason Giannoulakis, and then Dimos Theos, Stavros Tornes. We started thinking about creating a new Greek cinema, to take out the Greek cinema from the theatrical point of view, that the theater stage and shooting, and bringing the language of cinema in the Greek cinema. Little by little, we started creating a bigger group with the assistant directors, with the friends, with the three, Tonia Marketaki, Theo Angelopoulos, and Liaropoulos, Kostadarakos, coming back from Paris with the ideas of the Nouvelle Vague. I was working with the French Nouvelle Vague, and I was in the movement. We started working with 2 or 3 congregations per week to find out what's the way to create a new Greek cinema. The leaders, the intellectual leaders, were 2. Theo Angelopoulos, who believed that there's no Greek language, there's only international language, and my teacher is Antonioni, so I don't believe in Greekness. Greekness is a story that created from the generation of the 30s in literature about finding the Greek roots. And I was the other that insisted that if we don't find the Greek roots in the cinema, we won't get out. In fact, after the Junta in Paris, etc., we started making films where Angelopoulos started introducing the ναυτική, οι marines, οι τσαρουχικοί ναύτες, the sailors of Tsarouchis, and the popular culture and popular music in cinema. And I made one of the most Greek literature works, The Murderess, Phonissa by Papadiamandis, with rock music. So we understood that you can't do only one way, but you have to marry the two, international and ethnic. In fact, all the ideas are discreetly visible in my films because the subjects are not directly linked with the idea. The first time I made a jump walking out of the experiment and in the tradition of a narrative film, but with one secret. It was Rembetiko. Rembetiko was the first time that I tried to link the personal story of one person with the big history, that where everything is linked with the other. There is an interaction between the one person, his family, his work, his job, the political situation, the cosmic situation. Everything is linked with history. Whereas the people, the men, women, are το καύσιμο τώρα, εδώ είναι το πιο δύσκολο. The burn, yes, of history. And that's what I'm preparing now, a film about Cyprus since 1955 to 1966, where the personal story, one hero, a very simple man, is linked with the big history in parallel until the end, the two-thirds, where the big history joins the small history, where General Grivas, finds the home of my hero, where he stays for 2 years. Καταφύγιο, κρυφά. Hiding 2 years in the house of the simple man from the Messos. And then, after Makarios becomes a president, the little man becomes a deputy, and he works for the friendship between the Greeks and the Turks until he realizes that everything is burned by the traitors. And they were all traitors, except the youth that was sacrificed for a big idea. But they left behind by the Greek government, by the British, the general situation, and mostly something that is not very, very obvious, the great antagonism between the United States and England that goes until our days now. That was my discovery. The biggest antagonism was not between the United States and Soviet Union. The Cold War was a Cold War, was just not to make a war. The biggest antagonism was between Great Britain and United States that wanted to take all the colonies of England, take them as colonies of the United States. Because Churchill was a traitor for the Americans because he gave the half of Europe to Stalin. And then Truman, to take revenge, he sent the atomic bomb to Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
I see a very big discussion opening up here, which I don't think we have time for, because otherwise I would really want to get involved. But I would like to suggest we have one last question from the audience before we wrap, because it's been so wonderful and fascinating. So if anybody has a last question, now's your chance, and please feel free to raise your hand. Would anybody like to? Ersi, would you have a last?
What is left within you from that time of Paris? I'm not talking about memories. Τι έχει μείνει μέσα σου από εκείνη την εποχή? Όχι αναμνήσεις, ναι.
The one, I was always fond of the French culture, always. I remember when Jean-Daniel Paulet was reciting the Kavafis and Ritsos and all the Greek poets, I was reciting to him Verlaine, Rimbaud, Prévert, etc., etc. So we said, no, you have a big culture. I said, yes, you have also a big culture. I feel that, yes, I'm Greek, and I'm Greek born in Egypt, a special category of diaspora, we call it. But at the same time, I have something of France. I don't know what. And I think that was just a luck to come to France, the most beautiful period of Paris. And that's what said to me Stavros Kostadakos. I said,
Je peux dire quelque chose, s'il vous plaît?
Yep.
Juste, je voudrais juste dire que j'ai quelque chose à dire à Costas. En fait, Jean-Daniel disait de lui qu'il le nommait, il le définissait comme un apatride. Et c'était pour lui, quand il parlait de Costas, avec toujours un immense honneur, c'était apatride, c'était quelqu'un qui n'avait pas de frontières, ni dans sa tête, ni dans son corps.
Merci.
ça c'est beaucoup.
Moi aussi, je voudrais juste raconter un petit quelque chose. J'étais en Arménie soviétique au moment de la perestroïka, juste les dernières années soviétiques, et votre film Rembetiko était absolument adulé. Mon ex-mari a dû le voir 23 fois. C'était un vent de liberté incroyable. Il y avait les femmes, il y avait les chansons. Tout le monde était dans la salle. On mangeait, on fumait, les chaussures enlevées, ça durait des heures et les gens y retournaient sans cesse et sans cesse. C'était vraiment une merveille.
I think all that remains for me to do is to thank Costas Ferris
Thank you
very,
very
very
much.
much and to continue over a drink and food. But thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.